Welcome to our statewide special Break the Silence on Domestic Violence, a powerful streaming-only event designed to shine a light on a crisis affecting thousands of Nebraskans.
This live stream is a joint effort by Gray media stations across the state, 1011 KSNB Local 4, KNOP News 2, and First Alert 6 WOWT.
Together, we're tackling a statewide emergency, Nebraskans who were abused, injured, and killed by their intimate partners.
Tonight, we're opening a conversation many are too afraid to have and working to find real solutions to stop the violence.
First, let's take a look at the startling numbers surrounding domestic violence deaths in the state. The Nebraska Domestic Violence Death Review Team reports 72 domestic violence-related deaths between July 21st, 2022 and July 1st, 2025. In the first half of 2025 alone, there were 15 domestic violence-related deaths, more than in all of last year. And we know that number isn't final. There have been additional deaths reported since July.
The sheer number of lives lost can feel overwhelming. That's why we're taking a moment tonight to revisit the cases that shaped headlines and shook communities.
There have been so many high-profile tragedies. We had to split this look back into two parts. We begin with the first half of 2025.
1011's Matthew Mittleider walks us through those cases.
The story of a heartbreaking tragedy.
3 women killed after filing 3 separate protection orders.
Identifying the woman who died in an apparent act of domestic violence this weekend.
And a man involved in a high-profile domestic assault case has been sentenced. A manhunt in Lincoln ended last night with a domestic violence victim found alive.
Another tragic case of domestic violence shocks Lincoln.
Her life was stolen by a senseless act of violence.
2025's string of domestic violence starts on February 8th. When 36-year-old Jamie Hagan was killed, allegedly by her ex-fiancé Casey Kint, who shot her and then himself, but survived, pleading not guilty to her murder. Kint is accused of committing the crime the day after he got out of jail for violating a protection order that Jamie had filed against him.
She talked to the police department. She got the restraining order, got victims unit involved, did everything right, and it didn't really do any good.
Then on February 21st, 35-year-old Heather Gray was killed in Clay County by her husband, Toby Gray, who also shot himself. Court records show Heather had filed for divorce just the day before, as well as petitioning for a protection order. Their 3 children are now left without their parents. Finally, on February 26th, 21-year-old Michelle Gonzalez was killed in Lincoln by her boyfriend, Ibrahim Alhamadani, who hit her with his car and chased her through a neighborhood before shooting her and then himself. Gonzalez had filed a protection order against him that morning.
I'm outliving her, and it kills me. I get to experience a lot without her. And she won't get to live any more experiences. She won't grow old with me anymore.
Then in March, 40-year-old Boo Gay was killed on the 19th by her live-in boyfriend, Pa To. He also shot her 13-year-old son before killing himself. The boy was expected to survive the shooting, and 2 other children in the home were unharmed. Also in March, an Omaha woman named Kamisha Hollis, who had been missing since 2018, was officially declared dead. Her boyfriend Marvin Young pled no contest to her murder back in 2022.
He doesn't know the cry of a mother. He doesn't know my pain. He doesn't know that I'm petitioning the heavens day and night. That he does not rest until he tells the truth.
In April, a 24-year-old Georgia woman named Billy Meadows was left dead after a crash near North Bend, though deputies say she was found with multiple gunshot wounds. Her boyfriend, Brian Jesselink, is accused in the crime. Also in April, North Platte woman Nikki Fitch was assaulted by 29-year-old Nathan Creel. She was found by Lincoln County authorities in an RV park home, with swelling to her face and both of her eyes swollen shut. Her case sparked outrage both online and during the court case.
My daughter came home. She was the one that found me. She wasn't supposed to come home that night, and she did, and she was with her friend, so yeah, they were both involved. It's going to impact her for a lifetime.
Creel was later found guilty and sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison. He had previously served a 60-day sentence in 2024 for assaulting Fitch. Reporting in Lincoln, Matthew Mittleider, 1011 News.
We'll have more coverage of cases from the remainder of this year later in the show. Now, domestic violence is a problem often occurring behind closed doors. We wanted to give a voice to those affected who aren't able to speak out. Digital Director Amber Little joins us now to talk more about that mission.
Yeah, Danielle, we launched a page on our websites with a form for domestic violence survivors to share their stories. And in the first couple hours, we received more than 15 submissions. I watched them roll into my email, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. It's clear that people want an outlet to talk about it. They have a need to share. But most people submitted their stories anonymously, and we are committed to protecting their privacy. But we want to help amplify those voices. So throughout this show, you will not see commercial breaks. Instead, you're going to hear those survivor stories. They're real experiences endured by real Nebraska people. Their stories will be read by voice actors. Now, the women of 1011 lent their voices to these stories. And in this first story, we want to thank Shaylee Ybarra, who shares her connection with domestic violence and how it led to her daughter's death. This is her story.
My daughter Deja lost her life to domestic violence on December 31st, 2018. She was 21 years old and had 2 sons with her perpetrator. Deja had escaped domestic violence and had moved on with her life. She had moved into a new apartment, was working, and had started a new relationship. When her perpetrator was released from jail, Deja had an active protection order and he was placed on probation. He continued to stalk her without her knowing and hunted her down until she was dead. Although Deja thought she was protected and had all of the systems put in place to protect her, they failed her and her children. Deja was a loving and proud mother and was excited to have her 2 boys. She often talked about the fun and adventurous life that she would have with them, but that dream was taken from them all. I have made it my life goal to share Deja's story and to raise awareness about domestic violence.
Now, one of the organizations on the front lines of Lincoln's growing domestic violence crisis is Friendship Home.
1011's Megan Conway sits down with Danny Jurgens to discuss the rising demand for their services and what the organization is doing to keep up.
Hello everyone, I'm Megan Conway. I'm here speaking with Danny Jurgens of the Friendship Home here in Lincoln. We're going to cover a wide array of topics for you today, but Danny, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
Thank you for reaching out.
Yeah, recently when we spoke, you mentioned that numbers are trending higher for this year compared to last year. What do you think is driving that?
Yes, so we are seeing a lot more people that are reaching out this year, and the numbers have continued to steadily rise over the last several years. And honestly, it's not that domestic violence ever stopped or that domestic violence is new. A lot of the people that we're working with are expressing higher forms of lethality, and I think that is causing them to reach out more often.
And currently, how many people or individuals is the Friendship Home serving?
As of today, our numbers are 234.
And you know, for you guys, each case is different. When someone walks through that door, you always face a unique set of circumstances with every person. How does Friendship Home really meet each person's needs, not only physically with what they need, but also emotionally?
It's really, at Friendship Home, our stance is to walk alongside every individual. They know their story, they know their path and their journey, and the violence that they're experiencing is absolutely different for each and every individual. So we listen to them of what resources, services they need, and we do what we can to provide that or reach out to those that can.
And now, recently this year too, when we're talking about these violent cases that Lincoln Police are responding to, has Friendship Home changed their response at all with seeing these cases in the headlines?
Friendship Home has always just continued to be here for those that are experiencing violence. We're doing everything we can. If somebody reaches out, if there is a high risk, high need of lethality, if our shelters are full, we look at potentially emergency shelter, temporary emergency shelter through a hotel, any way that we can potentially help them, even doing a lot of daily safety planning with those that are experiencing violence.
And when you speak of that and kind of being stretched thin at resources at times, does that change your operations and your responses? Like you mentioned hotels, things like that you guys do?
Yeah, you know, there are challenges that come along when it comes to being a nonprofit organization. We're trying to provide more needs with funding, less funding at times. And so we're trying to figure out just different ways to be able to make sure we're maintaining our services, because that is the number one importance.
Absolutely. And from your perspective, what more could the community or even the systems do to lessen the outcome of these deadly cases?
It really comes down to education, educating yourself about the impact of domestic violence. Domestic violence just doesn't impact that one individual. It can be a ripple effect.
Yeah.
It impacts friends, family, employers. So really providing that educational piece, researching, understanding domestic violence, as well as knowing your resources in the community.
Well, Danny, thank you so much again for taking time to speak with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Friendship Home can't do this work alone. They need cash donations, household items, and baby care items. We've got all you need to know in order to pitch in on our app. In the spirit of breaking the silence tonight, we are hearing directly from the family of a woman lost to domestic violence in central Nebraska.
1011's Bailey Bischoff spoke with Angela's sister and son.
I'm here with Gina Carlson Dubbs and her nephew Tyler Carlson Rogers. We're here to talk about a case that's never been discussed publicly by family before. The 2023 murder of Angela Adams, your sister, your mom. Do you want to just start by telling me about Angela?
She was a very bubbly person, outgoing. She was always willing to help anybody that could ask for it. Everybody loved her.
She was always down for an adventure. Didn't matter if it was going to Walmart or going to the river. She was always down for an adventure.
Angela was killed by her husband, Jeffrey Adams. You told me on the phone that this was really shocking for your family. Can you talk a little bit about why that was?
For my part of the family specifically, Jeff and my fiance were very good friends for over 30 years, as well as with his family and extended family. The man had been in our house for very extended weeks at a time and around my children, and he had a temper, but never saw murder.
What was it like then to get that call?
It was terrifying. I was in Florida, and I had to drive 23 hours back with a million unanswered questions. What happened? Why? What to do now? Yeah, it was terrifying.
And you said your family's been affected by a cycle of domestic violence. Do you think that's contributed to Angela's story?
Absolutely. We grew up in an abusive, alcoholic home. This was an everyday life for us. This was normalized as when we were children. And that continued on into Angela's adult life with romantic partners.
And this is your first time speaking about Angela and what happened to her. Just why share her story now?
All the court cases are over. Everything's been settled. All of the estates, everything's been taken care of. Now's the time we can start talking about it, taking action and trying to help prevent more.
And just how do you think we can make a difference against this big issue?
Getting involved, making a report. Break the silence truly does mean break the silence. Education, more supports after there is a homicide, more supports when they're before the homicide. It's not one size fits all. Find what works for you and make it work.
Thank you both so much. Now we'll hear more from Gina as she takes this pain and turns it into purpose, teaming up with another family who's unfortunately also been affected by domestic violence. We'll have that later on in tonight's show.
Now, as we've been discussing, domestic violence affects communities across the entire state.
In North Platte, the Rape and Domestic Abuse Program works daily to help individuals overcome abuse before it's too late.
News 2's Victoria Norgard joins us with more on the vital work they do.
Today, I'm joined by Jennifer and Heather from the Rape and Domestic Abuse Program. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's talk about what RDAP does in general.
Rape and Domestic Abuse Program assists clients, survivors, victims of domestic and sexual violence, as well as human trafficking. And we also help with stalking as well.
And what is the need for a program like RDAP in the North Platte community?
There's a great need for it, especially providing safe spaces for people to go, to be able to leave the situation that they're in. Unfortunately, with funding cuts, we had to close 2 of our shelters. So we get really creative about how to support survivors as they're starting to leave, whether it's through housing, providing safe shelter at the time, helping find safe, affordable housing. There's not much we won't help clients to find resources.
I think adding to that as well, like just walking in that door takes so much courage, and just having someone listen to you, believe your story, and just be there. Safety plan, whether they are actively fleeing, leaving, whatever their choice is, just to have somebody say, I believe what you're saying is very impactful to them.
When it comes to our area in general, we've had some recent high-profile domestic violence cases that have gotten a lot of attention from the community. How do things like that affect either women in those kinds of situations who are still dealing with it, or just the community in general? I mean, what kind of attention does that bring?
Brings awareness to what is going on. It is a problem in our community. It has been for a long time.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add about that, or in general about what RDAP provides, or just anything else you think people should be aware of when it comes to domestic violence?
If you're in that situation, call, reach out. I know it's hard, but that first step will be there to help support you.
I think it's important to know that it's not just one demographic, or like it affects, like we operate in a rural area. We're in 5 counties, and we have a very large service area, and, even compared to larger service areas, like it's the same. It's universal. Domestic violence is everywhere.
Need of volunteers and donations to continue the work they do. We'll have a link for how to donate on our app.
Through my local DV advocacy agency, I was able to make a plan and was very close to the safe time designated to enact it when the fighting drastically escalated one evening and I had to get out right away. I left with nothing but my dogs and a change of clothes. I was extremely fortunate that the protection order was enough to make him leave me alone, and although it took almost as long to divorce him as we were married, I clawed back my life and made it better than it ever had been. I will forever be grateful to the advocates who gave me the greatest gift I've ever gotten or will get, the courage to save my own life.
In the beginning, I had no idea I was in an abusive relationship. I was young and in love. Over the years, it slowly and quietly got worse. I became conditioned, trained to endure his behavior. I read his cues to avoid fallout, not put up a fight when he wanted anything from me. He used all forms of abuse: reactive, emotional, mental, physical, sexual. Intimidation was a big one. After it had gotten to a certain level of abuse, I woke up. My children were young and terrified of their father, so I left. It took time, it took support, resources, which I didn't believe I had. It's not uncommon to be isolated. Voices of hope helped me. I was able to get a protection order that barred him from my residence, even though he was also on the lease. It was horrifying, but it's possible.
A recurring theme in many of this year's domestic violence cases is protection orders. Did the victim have one? Was it denied? Had it ever been served?
1011's Madison Pitch sits down with Beth McQueen, head of LPD's Victim Assistance Unit, to explain how these orders work and the role they play in keeping survivors safe.
So in Nebraska, there are 3 types of protection orders. There are sexual assault protection orders, there are domestic abuse protection orders, and there are harassment protection orders. What they really do is they create an option for law enforcement to act if somebody violates one of the provisions on the protection order, where they may not otherwise be able to. So if somebody violates one of the provisions on the protection order, then law enforcement can put them in jail. Otherwise, the protection order in and of itself is not a shield. It does not stop somebody from doing something if they are not motivated by getting in trouble with the law. There are a lot of circumstances that fall into a gray area that would, on its surface, you would say, well, that is harassing behavior, or that should qualify for a protection order, but really doesn't meet state statute. And so we struggle for those people to find something that really would help them. And we have conversations with people every day about situations like that that really don't meet the statute for protection orders.
That would be heavy.
It is very stressful. It's hard because then we have to safety plan around what else they can do. Harassment protection orders and sexual assault protection orders do not have locations on them. You cannot add a location to it. Because those aren't on there, that makes it difficult. You can get this protection order, but it's not an automatic violation if somebody comes to your work, comes to your house, comes to those places, which is quite often what's happening in stalking situations. Without those locations, people are still being actively stalked, and there's not a lot of legal recourse for that. And that's a huge problem for people because that's really what they need the protection order for. A lot of situations, people are either unable to come in and get the protection order, or they're too afraid to get the protection order, and then for a period of time after maybe the last incident occurred, and so then they come in maybe a couple weeks later, and then they ask for that protection order, and the last incident happened a few weeks ago or happened a month ago, and they can't articulate why they're in here today. And judges are not maybe as interested in giving a protection order if they don't have a reason they didn't come in last month. Talk to someone, even if it's just anonymously for the moment, and try to see what it is that their next steps could be. Sometimes even the smallest step is a huge step for somebody that has been living with somebody that's been controlling them for a long time.
Now, sometimes the tragedy of domestic violence pushes victims to their breaking point. Now we're bringing you the story of a Kearney woman recently convicted in the death of her husband. Local 4's Mark Baumert joins us from our Hastings studio with the details. Now, Mark, last month, 57-year-old Karen Geisler was sentenced to up to 65 years in prison for second-degree attempted murder and a weapons charge. She had been arrested in October 2024 after her husband, Jimmy Geisler, was shot and killed. So, Mark, what role did domestic violence play in this tragedy?
Well, Danielle, for a long time, we did not know for sure what the motivation behind the shooting was. The reason for that is because at the beginning of the court case last year, a judge sealed the probable cause document. That's the document that explains what the circumstances surrounding a crime are and is used as a basis for any charges that would be filed. It basically tells what happened.
Now, why was the document sealed, and can you kind of explain to the viewers what that means?
It means that the document is not made public for the public or the news media. The judge sealed the document at the request of the Buffalo County attorney. They argued that making that document public would compromise law enforcement's further investigation of Jimmy Geisler's death.
All right, and so how do we know domestic violence was a factor in this?
Well, after Karen Geisler pleaded no contest and was convicted of attempted murder, she was sentenced last month. That's when we, in the Local 4 newsroom, wrote a letter to Judge Patrick Lee asking him to unseal the document. Our reasoning was that now that Karen Geisler was convicted and sentenced to prison, there was no need to keep the document sealed. We attended a hearing on the matter last Friday in Kearney, and Judge Lee ruled in favor of our request and unsealed the probable cause document.
Now, what did that document reveal?
We learned that Karen Geisler called police after her husband was shot, and we also heard some statements that she made that day to police officers covering the scene. She said that she had been abused by Jimmy Geisler for years and was tired of being a victim. She told them that on the day she believed her husband was going to assault her, and that she had that day with her a .38 caliber handgun nearby in case that happened. An argument started, and she said Jimmy Geisler started moving toward her. She warned him that she would shoot when he continued to move toward her, so he continued to move toward her, and she shot him. Jimmy Geisler later died of his wounds at the hospital, and again, according to the probable cause document, she later told police officers, "What was I supposed to do?"
Now, what happens next for Karen Geisler?
Danielle, she's begun serving her sentence at the Nebraska Women's Prison in York. And Friday, her attorney notified authorities that she plans to appeal her sentence to the Nebraska Court of Appeals. That process is likely to take several months. We don't know what the result of that appeal will be, but it's possible that the case could be sent back to Buffalo County District Court in Kearney for another hearing on her sentence. And in any case, the Nebraska Court of Appeals will be asked to rule on whether a woman who was abused by her husband should spend 65 years in prison.
A case I'm sure we'll keep track of. Thank you, Mark.
Domestic violence can affect anyone and is unfortunately more common in our communities than we realize. Well, those who are living in a domestic violence situation or have lived in one experience a range of psychological issues. I spoke with UNK professor and psychologist Dr. Krista Fritzen to learn more about the effects of abuse on survivors. Many people will ask, how did this start? How did you find yourself in a situation like this? That's obviously a victim blaming type way of going about things, but how does maybe one start into a situation? It's very layered.
Basically, oftentimes it just starts as a normal, typical relationship, and there's not evidence of any anger outbursts or evidence of personality characteristics that would be problematic in a relationship. And then the person becomes more invested in the relationship, and it becomes more and more difficult even when complicated or aggressive behaviors begin.
When something does start up, it seems like it starts slow and then things can kind of progress.
It progresses. If there's like children involved or other family, it can have an impact on the decision making of all people involved. But also self-esteem starts decreasing, increased evidence and likelihood of developing some depressive symptoms, isolation from others, hiding information, becoming deceitful so that others don't find out because of the shame and the guilt. And there's an emotional tie to this individual. There's resources and investments in relationships and time, and depending on other family factors, that really makes it difficult, even if it's a domestic situation where there's violence or there's harm occurring. And then people are also coerced to believe that it's their fault.
In helping kind of break this cycle, I know that some schools will have experts come in and talk to the young male and female adults, because more often than people realize, it can happen in high school and with young relationships.
Oh, definitely. It occurs at all ages once we get into any form of dating or relationship kinds of things. But those educational programs are priceless in many ways. It's important that it's a credible speaker with evidence-based discussions and information, but it's invaluable in that we can get the information out, make it less commonplace for a person to continue in the relationship, help them be more aware of and recognize those early red flags or early signs that this relationship is moving in a direction that's not helpful, as well as to access resources and find ways to be able to remove themselves from those situations. Likewise, it could be a deterrent, because maybe it could help an individual recognize what their behavior patterns are and how maybe they've been exposed to domestic violence, and it can give them the energy and the support to prevent themselves from moving in that direction.
Dr. Fritzen, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
I think the important thing is recognizing that education and discussion can be a tool. We aren't going to cause domestic violence to happen by talking about it. So the conversations are super important, and UNK wants to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And so we appreciate you letting us talk about these things when we have the opportunity.
We lived in a very nice neighborhood. Everything looked nice on the surface, but I had no access to finances or ability to leave unless I lost everything, which he always reminded me of. I did leave him, and I lost everything, including family pets, heirlooms, personal items that meant things to me, literally everything. My kids didn't even have beds. I wish the court took abuse against the mother into consideration when looking at child custody and visitation. I wish they took emotional abuse seriously. We often don't leave because it's putting our kids into the same abuse situation as when we were with them, only with poverty and less control over keeping our kids safe.
My story is of generational domestic violence. Unfortunately, I repeated the pattern of what I grew up with, except instead of waiting for violence through a husband, it began when I was a 15-year-old with a boyfriend. What I thought was love quickly grew into a cage I couldn't get out of. The jealousy, anger, and violence took on my entire life. He promised he would kill me if I ever left him, so for a while I gave up. I put up with the punches and kicks because I thought it was better than dying. I deserved it, is what he had drummed into me. I was the ripe old age of 16. It didn't happen overnight, but I broke free with some backup. Life was so full of fear, shame, non-existent self-esteem, guilt, and every negative feeling possible. I had no self-confidence left.
Now let's refocus on why we are here today, shining a light on the devastating domestic violence cases that have tragically claimed lives and affected families across Nebraska this year.
1011's Darsha Dodge takes us through the timeline starting in August with a suspected murder-suicide in southeast Nebraska.
On August 20th, 23-year-old Jalea Compton and her suspected killer, 27-year-old Adam Lewis, were found dead in a home in Falls City. Compton had filed a protection order against Lewis on July 14th, while Lewis filed one against her 2 days later. Both protection orders were denied on July 22nd. Then in September, the Nebraska State Patrol asked for help finding an Alliance man who had gone missing in August. Authorities later found the remains of 32-year-old Ibram Cifuentes in rural Box Butte County. 26-year-old Tamara Bingham and 36-year-old Matthew Landreth were arrested, facing murder charges in connection to the case. Bingham and Cifuentes were dating, with allegations of DV from Bingham.
It's awesome to see the support that we've gotten for Kennedy.
Then, on September 16th, 25-year-old Kennedy Demuth was killed after being shot in the head in a Columbus home. Court documents allege that her and 26-year-old Jack Reeg had been having arguments for months, and on the night of her killing, he grabbed a .22 caliber rifle and threatened her with it. Police believe he was trying to scare her, but pulled the trigger and shot her.
How did the person that I loved so much bring us both here?
Then at the end of September, the search for 42-year-old Desiree Beck, who authorities say was assaulted and kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend Christopher Collins. Beck says she went to see Collins the day of the kidnapping and woke up in one of his rental properties bloody and bruised. An LPD SWAT team burst into the home late that night, noting a strong odor of gas throughout the house.
He had zero intention of both of us making it out. I just kept praying and praying and praying before I fell asleep, please somebody find me. Like, I do not want to end my life here on this note.
Finally, October. On the 2nd, 51-year-old Sterling Jordan didn't show up for work, and after multiple welfare calls, he and 51-year-old Jennifer MacArthur were found dead in a Lincoln home. Police say she had multiple gunshot wounds, and he had one to the head. Lastly, on October 21st, 43-year-old Tracy Henman was found dead in her Lincoln home. Police say her boyfriend, Joshua Myers, was also found inside with self-inflicted injuries to the face and neck. He was arrested and faces a first-degree murder charge.
These women were mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, partners, friends, and colleagues. None of them deserve to lose their life at the hands of someone they loved. This cannot continue.
Reporting in Lincoln, Darsha Dodge, 1011 News.
And as you just heard, many of the high-profile domestic violence cases this year have occurred right here in Lincoln.
After Tracy Henman was found with fatal knife wounds in her home, Lincoln Mayor Leirian Gaylor Baird spoke out against the violence. I sat down with the mayor to discuss the city's efforts, from law enforcement training to providing support for victims. I asked her, what can Lincoln do to help? Domestic violence is a silent epidemic affecting far too many. Our community is dedicated to breaking this cycle, providing support, and ensuring resources are known. We are honored to have Lincoln Mayor Leirian Gaylor-Baird here to shine a light on this crucial issue. Mayor, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you to you and your team at 1011 for shining a light on how to prevent domestic violence.
I know back in October you released a statement regarding recent domestic violence incidents here in Lincoln, and you said Lincoln is mourning another tragic loss caused by domestic violence. Like you, I am heartbroken that we have lost one of our neighbors and incredibly concerned that this is one of 4 fatalities resulting from domestic violence that our community has experienced this year. And in that statement, you encourage the community to work together to prevent violence and protect one another. So what can we as citizens do here in Lincoln?
Yeah. First and foremost, you can be informed and know about the vast array of resources that do exist in Lincoln to support victims, to help de-escalate situations where domestic violence is occurring, and also to help prevent that from even happening in the first place. And I want to say that our team at LPD, the Lincoln Police Department, is incredibly dedicated to protecting everyone and have special training and a victim assistance unit that's at the ready should people need to come and seek a protection order or other services. And we also at the city want folks to be able to watch for the signs and to say something if they see something, and know that you can reach out to the Lincoln Police Department and call for a welfare check if need be. We can send officers to do that kind of caring, compassionate work that can oftentimes be part of saving a life.
That's what I was going to ask you. What kind of training does LPD go through so that they are aware of the signs?
Right. You know, to become a Lincoln police officer, you have to go through extensive training. Our academies last months, and part of that training involved the opportunity to help those who are experiencing domestic violence. And then we have a special unit, the Victim Assistance Unit, that has extensive training in just that. And we have both, you know, commissioned officers who are doing welfare checks, as I mentioned, but also civilian staff who can work in relationship with our community members if they're experiencing this kind of violence, and make sure that they have support as they navigate the court system.
So what is the city's long-term vision for reducing domestic violence and then supporting affected families?
Yeah. This is a complex issue, and we of course have the responsive services that I've described, but we also take a real proactive approach because we know that interventions that can prevent domestic violence start with families and their stability. So, for instance, we at the Health Department have recently launched the 6 Pillars of Emotional Well-Being video series that people can find on our website. That's meant to help support parents and families in having healthy relationships. We want people to have healthy relationships that can prevent the kind of inability to manage anger and emotions that lead to violence. And then we have our home visiting program through the Health Department for newborns and families at that very vulnerable moment. We want people to understand what supportive services exist to get the best start in life. And then our partnerships with Lincoln Public Schools are a part of our proactive approach by ensuring a safe school environment with our school resource officers, by helping to support behavioral health resources in the schools. We're trying to kind of build that strong community fabric and that strong family fabric that can prevent these kinds of experiences from ever coming to light. Economic stability is huge too, and so our investments in workforce and economic opportunity for families are about making sure that people have the financial stability that prevents toxic stress in the home environment.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. And I know that you continue to collaborate with organizations like Voices of Hope and the Friendship Home, and people can always reach out to them as well.
Yep, and we really encourage that. This is a community-wide effort, and our Lincoln Police Department works closely with Friendship Home and Voices of Hope. Our joint budget committee with Lancaster County helps to resource those organizations because they have the expertise and training and do this work every day. Knowing how to reach their 24-hour hotlines is a good thing for people to know how to do. They're there at the ready.
Okay, Mayor, thank you for being here today for this important topic.
Thank you.
Misconception of domestic violence is that it only happens to women, but we looked into the stats and men can be victims too. Local 4's Casey Mintz spoke with a Tri-City area organization about what they're seeing with male survivors of domestic violence.
About 15% of the people Willow Rising serves here in central Nebraska are men, and the director of the organization, Tashana Sawyer, says that if all men came forward with their domestic violence experience, that number would be much greater.
That is a perception that we have, that it's women victims, and we hear that in the language and the way that people talk about domestic violence. And so I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations. Boys don't cry, men don't cry, we don't show our emotions. I mean, those things are still like really prevalent in society. And so for sure there's more victims out there.
And Sawyer notes they have a different approach to male survivors of domestic violence than other similar organizations in the state.
We're one of the only shelters that shelter men in our home and with women. So we're a little bit unique in that way. We've had men sheltered with their children. And so, you know, at the end of the day, they're a victim and they're there to get services and to figure out the next steps in their journey. Really are proud of the fact that we are able to do that and really great success with it.
Sawyer says sexual orientation also isn't a determining factor when it comes to these domestic violence situations.
I think we just have this perception that it's mostly women or maybe it's LGBTQ men that experience this, but it's not. It's all men from all different kinds of relationships. They have just as much probability of being in a domestic violence relationship as the female.
And when it comes to seeking help for domestic violence, Sawyer says working on mental health can have a big impact on that.
As we really kind of work through the mental health stigma, we see more men attending counseling and those kinds of things. So I'm hoping that as we start peeling back that stigma a little bit, we'll also see more men seeking help here at Willow Rising and at different agencies. Advice to them would just be that we're here to support them just the same as we would anyone else.
And as far as that shelter, Sawyer says that in the last year, they've had about 13 men stay there. Reporting in Grand Island, I'm Casey Mintz for Local 4 News.
I deeply believed at the end of my relationship I deserved the abuse. But what changed the cycle is seeing my animals have to endure the abuse. They were enough once I had the right supports around me and in place. 2 years ago, I testified regarding animals being included in domestic abuse protection orders. When that passed and was implemented, I finally found hope in my story, the good that was drawn from terror. I have forgiven my abuser. I still cope and process with the aftermath, but I'm healing piece by piece.
My best friend Jalea was murdered 2 months ago due to domestic violence in Falls City, Nebraska. He then killed himself, leaving their child behind. She did not get granted her protection order, and I remember the day she cried, calling me because she didn't get it. She deserved the world, and she's not here anymore because of him. I've also been through DV myself that I never reported. I'm grateful to be alive, to be here for my kids today, and I wish that Jalea was still here with us today.
Last April, 2 women who were staying at a domestic violence shelter in Kearney had to leap out of a window to escape a fire in the middle of the night. The staff from the Safe Center were called to the scene to watch as the house burned, but now they're turning ashes into hope. Local 4's Madison Smith has this story.
Flames will not stop the Safe Center staff in Kearney from protecting women and children who are fleeing domestic violence. I walked through what's left of their shelter with the executive director, who shared their mission is to serve those in need. The outside of the Safe Center is nothing but charred siding. A place that was once a safe haven for those needing to flee domestic violence is now down to just nails and studs.
It was really unbelievable that this happened. We had always prepared for emergency and crisis situations like this, but to actually have it happen, it was very scary.
The Safe Center doesn't just help those in need in the city of Kearney. They support any woman and children in need of their services across Buffalo, Franklin, Phelps, Harlan, and Kearney counties. The shelter is a small but crucial part of providing care for the 600 they serve each year.
This shelter has always been a place for us that we wanted to make very home-like, so that people coming from a crisis situation where they're fleeing something that's really been horrible for themselves, for their children, we wanted to make it a refuge, and the loss of that has been challenging.
Since the fire, the Safe Center is placing victims at local hotels to provide protection for those fleeing violence. But the memories that were made at the house on Highway 30 stay with the Safe Center staff.
Remembering people who gardened here and people who really were able to take time to work on themselves and to go out into the community and be successful at that.
A timeline is unclear for when a new shelter will be secured, and Gosman says they're not looking to build a new one as it's too expensive to build a home with 5 bedrooms surrounded by fencing and security cameras.
This has been a very challenging time for our organization, and wanting to make sure that we take the next steps that are right for the survivors that we assist every day.
They're currently looking for a new shelter to get people out of hotels and back into a safe communal home. The Safe Center jump-started their Safe Tomorrow campaign with a $25,000 legacy donation from a former board member. They have a goal of $250,000, and they're currently around halfway there.
Next, we head into West Central Nebraska, where News 2's Beatrice Reyna takes a closer look at how domestic violence can impact children.
Thank you so much. I'm Beatrice Reyna, and I'm joined by Corinne Size and Mandy Newton with A Bridge of Hope to talk about a topic that is not discussed as much or people don't even think about, and that is the secondary effects of domestic violence on children. Thank you, first of all, for joining me and talking about this topic. First of all, how many cases do you see of this?
More times than not, we see a good amount. We usually average around 300 cases a year, give or take. And I'd say a good majority of that is witness to domestic violence.
Talk about the impacts of that can have on children.
They will start throwing tantrums at ages where they should be outgrowing that. I think that kids will start isolating. They don't want friends to come over. And then again, on the other side, they still love both of their parents and they still want to fight for them to stay together. And then so that brings on another bit of stress.
Are there signs that people can look for or teachers can look for?
I think, again, like the self-isolation, a kid just wanting to be to themselves in school, not talking to their friends or associating with their friends, lack of concentration in school, say that they were an A+ student and now their grades are slipping. I think those are pretty significant signs to look for.
How about parents? What can they do?
A lot of times with the victim, a lot of times is going to stay because they're financially supported. They have a home. If they leave, how are they going to get their support financially? Are they going to have a vehicle? Are they going to have food? So they look at that, and they a lot of times will stay in the abuse just because they don't want to lose that. And they think that that's helping the kid when in fact it's hurting the child.
You know, there's been unfortunately too many of these cases this year, specifically in eastern Nebraska, that have not turned out well. What's your message?
Get out.
Yeah.
Get out, tell someone. Because like you said, the past that we've been seeing with the DV in our area has not gone well, and I feel like it's getting worse. Our DV cases have been a lot recently, as far as what the kids are seeing and hearing, and a lot of the parents really don't think their kids see it or know that it's happening, but we then interview the kids and they know exactly what's happening.
It goes back to how it can lead into their adult life. Learned behavior is a huge issue, and a lot of times these children grow up to be in a domestic violence relationship or to be the perpetrator, which is, the sad thing to say, but that's what they're so used to, and it's so normalized for them. They don't know any better. So a huge thing, is counseling is important, and leaning on your resources. A lot of people may be embarrassed to call, but it's not our job to shame anybody or judge anybody. We're here to get someone out of these situations, or help them, I should say, and be an advocate for them, be a shoulder to lean on. And so, I think it's very important for people to use their resources.
That was Beatrice Reyna with KNOP News 2 talking to Bridges of Hope Child Advocacy Center in North Platte.
Financial control is a hidden barrier that traps many people in abusive relationships, something we've highlighted in several segments today.
First Salute 6's John Chapman in Omaha reports on how one group is equipping women with the financial skills and stability they need to leave for good.
Finances play a major role in domestic violence, with financial abuse occurring in almost all cases as a method of control.
Oftentimes, the decision to leave has to do with, can I provide financially for myself in order to start over? Can I provide for my kids? And if I don't feel like I can do that, then I'm going to stay.
Katie Welsh is the Women's Center for Advancement's Vice President of Programming. She tells us using money as a weapon to keep someone in a bad situation is more common than we think.
I think a very classic form that we hear about a lot is, I'm going to give you allowance, or you're going to have to ask me for money in order to just get groceries, which the family needs.
Even when survivors are able to leave a bad relationship, the financial problems go with them and can stay with them for a very long time.
Financial abuse, when that occurs, that impacts your credit. And we know that if we don't have good credit, we're not going to be able to get a vehicle or finance a vehicle on our own. We're not going to be able to get an apartment on our own.
We are a transitional living facility, so our ladies they live here they can have up to 2 children each.
Carol Kinlow is the founder of Carol's House of Hope. Safe and secure housing is provided for women dealing with a number of issues, domestic violence being one. There are 33 rooms here, 16 of the rooms bedrooms for moms and their children. In this setting, domestic violence victims learn to be domestic violence survivors, and it starts with getting their finances together.
They get all different types of classes for coping skills, for financial literacy. We do all the case management for them, budgeting, all that, so that they are learning how to become self-sufficient.
Carol knows what it takes to become self-sufficient. A survivor of domestic violence herself, she was in a bad situation years ago.
As a young teen, yes.
As a young teen.
Mm-hmm.
How does that help you help them?
It helps me understand where they are, but it also lets them see that they don't have to stay there. If I'd stayed there, I wouldn't be doing this right now.
Carol says to help the women become financially stable, they have to work and they have to pay rent here.
So that they get used to the fact of, an exchange for housing, for utilities. We want you to clean up your credit, things like that. So they are required to work at least 32 hours a week, and then they have classes with us in the evenings.
Carol tells us by the end of the program, most of that rent money goes back to the women.
So that they can get their apartment, they can have their deposit.
The walls of Carol's House of Hope are lined with pictures and words of women who found success through the program. That took the financial pressure off as they continued their journey to financial independence.
You have a room to stay in, your children are safe. We start to build those things. So how do we build some of that self-esteem and let you know that it's possible? And again, if you could look at my life back then and you look at my life today, it's possible.
In Omaha, I'm John Chapman, First Alert 6.
My abuser and I have been together for almost 3 years until I finally decided enough was enough 2 weeks ago and finally called the cops on him and got a protection order. Our relationship started out great, and then after about a year, it all changed. He went back to drugs and started becoming very abusive. He held a loaded gun to my head twice and threatened to pull the trigger. I should have left then, but it isn't that easy. He started to constantly yell at me, put me down, do anything he could to verbally abuse me. Then, one night, he held a knife to my throat and told me if I made a sound, he would unalive me. He had punched me several times, and I had numerous black eyes and bruises that I would try to make up lies about.
It was beating after beating. The next day, everything seemed fine. He was apologetic. I'll never do it again. It won't happen again. I'm sorry. Don't leave me. I can't be without you. And so on, and so on. And it never changed. It just got worse. The beatings, the verbal abuse for 11 years. He made me think I could not live without him. Made me think that nobody would ever want me, that I was fat, disgusting, and ugly. He choke slammed me and swung a vacuum cord and smacked me with it several times in front of my kids. Seeing the fear in their eyes was terrifying. Seeing the hurt in their eyes for me killed me. It made me feel as if I was letting them down by putting up with it. So after he passed out, I packed my boys and left and never went back. I have been free from all the hurt and pain for over 11 years.
While anyone, any age, any gender can be a victim of domestic violence, those that are college age are often overlooked. Local 4's Victoria Harris has the latest on one of the main causes of this phenomena.
College is the time when you are trying to figure out how to navigate the real world. And while it has many exciting aspects, it also comes with challenges. With one of those challenges being loneliness and isolation, Hastings College professor Laura Logan says that the campus environment can impact the willingness to speak out about domestic violence.
Well, I think it's important to know that domestic violence is pretty common for college women. 1 in 5 college women experience verbal abuse. 1 in 6 experience sexual victimization with a dating partner, and more than 50% experience domestic violence.
She discussed some of the risk factors that come with domestic violence, with the most common one being isolation.
If you are disconnected from the people who support you, the people who love you, the people who witness your life, then you don't have the kind of support you need.
Although college can be an isolating place for young men and women, it can also be a place to build lifelong friendships that can reduce the threat of staying in domestic violence situations.
Survivors or victims who have contact with a support system of friends and family, they feel more confident. They feel more encouraged and supported when they're making decisions about what to do about their situation.
Making connections is a crucial aspect about speaking up and talking about domestic violence cases. If you are feeling alone, there are resources on your college campus that can help you out. Reporting at Hastings College, Victoria Harris, KSMB, Local 4 News.
One program here in Lincoln focuses on equipping college students with resources to combat domestic violence. 1011's Darsha Dodge has that story.
College campuses aren't immune to domestic violence, but experts say it often goes unnoticed.
We know these crimes are not reported, and so in abundance. So part of our job is to get the word out.
Jen Dyson heads the coordinated community response team at Nebraska Wesleyan, tasked with raising awareness among students.
Recognizing these students are in a place where they're kind of making decisions on their own. They're not living at home all the time, and they're new maybe to more serious relationships or committed relationships.
They connect student survivors with resources and allow them to be in control of the process and their own healing. At the same time, they do outreach, showing students the difference between healthy and unhealthy dynamics.
The response of the students are like, I've seen that, I just didn't realize that fell under the realm of unhealthy. I didn't know that that was what was happening in that situation.
Dyson and the team work to educate students on the power and control dynamics, especially with stalking, made easier in the digital age, hoping to arm students with knowledge and a place to go if something isn't right.
Trust your instincts. When you feel like something's happening, even if someone's telling you it's your fault, trust your instincts.
Darsha Dodge, 1011 News.
Across our group of stations, we knew reporting on domestic violence wasn't enough. We wanted to take action.
That's why we signed up for Green Dot training. Green Dot is a bystander intervention strategy designed to prevent power-based personal violence, including dating or domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or emotional abuse, represented as red dots. The goal is to create more green dots than red, equipping people to safely interrupt harmful situations using the 3 Ds. Direct means you confront the situation head on. Distract means you divert attention away from the situation and de-escalate it. And delegate means asking for help when you can't or don't feel comfortable intervening directly.
No one has to do everything, but everyone has to do something. Everyone deserves a life free from violence, and that's something that we can achieve. If it feels off to you, trust your gut and, kind of do one of the 3Ds.
It's important to understand your own barriers when it comes to using Green Dot. Trainers emphasize that intervention doesn't have to be heroic, just safe, realistic, and something anyone can do.
Thank you everyone for joining. Everyone in this Teams chat participated in a free Green Dot training thanks to Voices of Hope in Lincoln, Encourage Advocacy Center in Hastings. It wasn't just the on-air team that you normally see on air, some of which are in this group, but it was the people you don't see on air, including myself, our sales, our production, our creative services department. So our teams from Lincoln, Hastings, North Platte, were all involved in this training. I think we all found it beneficial. That's why we're here. So we're going to go around and share our takeaways.
Green Dot teaches us to be connected in our communities, to actually, when you're walking your neighborhood, when you're going out for your run, if you're out just visiting with people, connect with your neighbors, know who your neighbors are, know who lives in your apartment building, smile at those folks when you see them and you hold the door for them in the morning, right? It's that ability to connect with people. So if somebody does need you, they're comfortable with you, or if you notice something's weird, you now have a baseline. And that was my big takeaway.
Yeah, Jackie, I think those connections are so important and having that support system. And I really want to be a part of that for people as well. So for the training, for me, one of the most impactful parts was learning my own barriers that might keep me from not acting when I sense that something is wrong, and learning ways to act despite them. They really emphasized how even just a small action can disrupt a potentially harmful situation. It doesn't have to be something that's confrontational.
We had Elias Bear with Encourage Advocacy Center come out to the station here. And, he was able to highlight a lot of different things in his short time here. But one of the things is talking about the different types of abuse. Because when you think of domestic violence, I think you think of physical abuse is the main thing. But there is so many different levels, financial, emotional, and just the different kinds of abuse and things to maybe keep an eye out and aware of. That's something you probably didn't think of, or something I know I wasn't thinking of.
Unfortunately, it's kind of a close to home subject for me because my mom went through it and my best friend went through it and actually just got out of a bad relationship like that. But one thing that was mentioned is kind of what happens during domestic violence situations. It's not always physical or hitting. Sometimes it's isolation. And the level of isolation is something that, my best friend went through. He was basically isolated for 7 years from everybody. And that was one form of abuse that he went through. That's, my mom went through that. And, just the type of isolation that they put you through is a big takeaway that I had from this.
So often in the media, we see the tail end of what happens. I've been up at court several times and your stomach turns, you become sick to your stomach, your heart breaks for these victims. So for me, learning how I could potentially become involved to make a situation better and what to be aware of so that maybe I could intervene or somebody I know could intervene prior to reaching the point of the horrendous stories that we see on the news and the cases that we cover across Nebraska.
We see the violent outcomes of it, but really it's going to be fixed by looking at the smaller incidents, right? Keeping an eye on your neighbor, keeping an eye on your friend. And just helping one or two people at a time because that's really all the power that we have. We can't fix everything all at once. We have to do it bit by bit. And there's a lot of good resources here.
One of my key takeaways from our training session was the fact that this is not just an adult issue. This is something that affects teens and young adults. I've got 2 kids of my own, and I was thinking as I was sitting through the training that this is not a topic I've even covered with them, and I wasn't expecting to hear some of the statistics that we heard regarding how common this is with teens and young adults.
Going off of kind of what Sherry and Tristan and a lot of people talked about, it's the scope of things and the vigilance that we have to have as we're paying attention and wanting to be green dots. And the thing that struck me is not only do I know people who have been affected by domestic violence, but you that means you know someone who's perpetrated it. That means that someone in your life could be a perpetrator of it that you don't know, and to look for those signs on the opposite end, not just looking for victims, but for people who speak about it or say something that rubs you the wrong way.
If you are interested in Green Dot and want to sign up for a training, check out our news app for that information.
Like Green Dot, there's another active bystander training, this one focused on the hospitality industry, called Safe Bars. The Safe Center in Kearney says they partner with bars, restaurants, and breweries to help staff spot concerning behaviors early and safely intervene using skills they use every day. Envy Bar and Cigar Lounge was the first to participate in the program. GM Nicole Vasquez, who worked in hospitality for over a decade, says she's experienced situations where she didn't know how to respond, like inappropriate touching or comments. Safe Bars equips staff to recognize those cues and act safely.
We try to empower the individuals that go through the training, that they do set the tone, that their bar or restaurant, that's their house. They set the tone and, use those customer service skills to make sure that everyone's having a good time.
Over the past 2 years, the Safe Center has trained several businesses and held community events despite some initial pushback.
It's breaking that stigma of just because you sign up for Safe Bars does not mean that you're constantly seeing assault in your establishment. It's that you're wanting to equip your staff with the best tools possible.
Safe Bars requires 75% of staff to complete the training, signaling the business's commitment to creating a safer space in the community.
One of the domestic violence cases that shocked the state involves the death of Jamie Hagan. A Seward man, Jamie's ex-fiancé, is accused of shooting her before attempting to take his own life.
1011's Bailey Bischoff sits down with Jamie's stepmom to hear how she's working to prevent tragedies like this one in the future.
I'm here with Belinda Hagan and Gina Carlson Dubs. We're talking about their new nonprofit, Enough DV. Now, Belinda, we'll start with you. We heard about Jamie's story earlier in the show, but can you tell me why Jamie's death launched you into advocacy and then starting Enough DV?
Sure. So I think Enough DV exists now. We just recognize the gaps. The gaps in knowledge, the gaps in maybe support that's available following a homicide that directly impacts a family significantly, obviously. Those first few weeks were really overwhelming. We were spending 18 hours a day shuffling paperwork and figuring out who we needed to call or what needed to happen next. And I just really wished that somebody was there that I could reach out to, that we could find that support. Following her death, we really focused on a lot of case studies. Headlines became really real and wasn't something that was just a blip on our TV screen. And we started paying attention to the dynamics involved in each case to become better informed and hopefully serve as better advocates going forward.
And what are the goals of Enough DV?
We'd like to empower victims, support survivors, really do a lot of community education and outreach, and change some laws to strengthen domestic violence survivors and prevent this from happening going forward.
We would also like to look at the gaps after a DV homicide. Just through our process, we found that there's a lot of things that we looked for knowledge and we couldn't find an answer.
And, we just got the call last week, I believe, that you got your 501c3 status. Just what was it like to have that paperwork go through, less than a year after all this started?
Yeah, so we started the process really early. We had our state filing in as early as April, which was within a couple of months of Jamie's event. And then we submitted our federal application in June. But having that status is vitally important for us as a nonprofit organization, because we'll be able to reach out to local businesses and potentially larger donors as we develop our programs and figure out how to build that foundational base so that we can then provide those support services on the backside.
What can people do to support Enough DV?
At this point, donations, volunteers. We need help with different aspects of research, compiling information. When we're looking at writing bills, we've got to have good statistics to back up what we're asking for.
And now, Unfortunately, both of your families have been impacted by domestic violence, and we hope that there's fewer families like yours out there in the future. But what would be your message to them?
First, I think I'd like to just say that we're really sorry that you have to handle and deal with these scenarios. They're very personally impactful. Obviously, they've impacted children and families. Believe the survivors. Become educated yourself. Figure out what tools and resources are out there and available, and understand those dynamics. Do your best to build safety plans and have the ability to get away if at all possible.
Find the support that works for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Find the support that works for you and don't stop until you do.
You can donate to Enough DV through the link on our app.
Nebraskans, while passionate and motivated, cannot take this issue on alone. One key source of funding for domestic violence programs comes from the federally supported Victims of Crime Act and Violence Against Women Act.
We asked Nebraska lawmakers if they would be supporting this cause.
We need to continue to make sure that we're supporting our law enforcement and other officials with regard to stamping out domestic violence and the violence against anybody.
Congressman Mike Flood told 1011 that strengthening programs to combat domestic violence has long been a priority for him, including co-sponsoring legislation supporting the Crime Victims Fund. Congressman Adrian Smith also confirmed he is a co-sponsor of the Crime Victims Fund Stabilization Act.
Now, throughout tonight's show, we've highlighted nonprofits making a real difference in the fight against domestic violence.
And remember, you can help too. Head to your local news app to see a list of ways to get involved and links to donate.
Now, we also want to remind you, if you are experiencing abuse, resources are available. We have a list of those resources on all of our websites. Community members across the state are here to help. You deserve a safe home, and you deserve a healthy relationship, and there is hope.
The National Domestic Violence Hotline is on your screen now. Call 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. Thank you for joining us and helping to break the silence on domestic violence.